My stepmother and father demanded that I give them the house I inherited from my late mother. So I made the decision to kick them out. Sometimes I wonder if people can sense when everything in their life is about to change forever. 8 years ago, when my mother passed away, I was just 18, and my world completely fell apart. My father was shattered, and I tried to stay strong for both of us. The house she cherished, the one where she painted in the living room and cared for her beloved garden, suddenly felt painfully empty. Mom had left the property to me in her will, which seemed unusual at the time, but she explained it was a gesture of love and protection. "One day you'll understand, my daughter," she said during her final days. Now at 26, I finally do. 3 years after her passing, Dad met Sandra. She was the opposite of Mom. Where my mother was calm and soft-spoken, Sandra was outspoken and assertive. She had 2 daughters, Jessica, age 19, and Amanda, 16. Dad seemed truly happy again. I wanted him to be happy, so I opened both my heart and my home to them. At first, Sandra was even kind. She said I was like a daughter to her, and that we could finally be a complete family. Her daughters were polite, though a bit shy. Jessica studied business administration, and Amanda was still in high school. We looked like a normal family, sharing dinners, watching movies on weekends. But slowly, small things started to shift. It began with minor comments. "This house is too big for one person," or "Your mother had such unusual taste." Then came her suggestions. "How about we renovate the kitchen? It's so outdated." She always said "we," as if it were a joint decision. I worked as an administrative assistant at an accounting firm, earning enough to support myself, but not enough for big changes. Sandra, on the other hand, had a craft business that seemed to be doing well. She began paying for small repairs and improvements, always saying it was our contribution to the home. The first time I truly felt disturbed was when I came home and found the living room furniture completely rearranged. "It looks much better this way, don't you think?" Sandra asked casually. Mom's old sofa, the one where she used to read, was turned toward the wall. I said nothing, but something in my chest tightened. Dad didn't seem to notice, or perhaps preferred not to. He was busy trying to retire early, and when he was home, he wanted peace. "Women handle these things better than I do," he'd say, shrugging. Then came the matter of Mom's room. I had kept it just as she left it, her jewelry on the dresser, books on the bedside table, and unfinished paintings on the easel. It was my sanctuary, the only place I still felt her presence. Sandra started hinting that it was unhealthy to keep it that way. "You need to move on, dear," she'd say with a smile that never reached her eyes. "Your mother wouldn't want you stuck in the past." But I wasn't stuck. I was preserving the memory of the woman who raised me, who made that house more than just walls and bricks. Sandra didn't seem to understand, or maybe she understood too well. Things escalated when she began using Mom's studio for her craft projects. One day she came home with boxes of materials and started setting up her workspace. "This room was being wasted," she explained when I protested. "Your mother would have wanted it used productively." For the first time, I felt real anger. How could she speak for my mother, a woman she'd never met? When I talked to Dad, he said Sandra was being practical and that I should be grateful for how she was maintaining the house. Grateful. The word echoed in my head for days. Grateful that someone was taking over my own inheritance? Grateful for being pushed aside in my own home? That's when I realized Sandra wasn't just living in the house. She was positioning herself as its new owner. Her confident smile when she rearranged my things, the way she said "our decisions," the way she moved through the house like it belonged to her, it all became too clear. That night, lying in my bed, I decided I wouldn't let her take what was mine. My mother left this home to me for a reason, and I would protect it. I didn't know then that I was only at the start of a fight that would test both my strength and the loyalty of the people around me. Over the next few months, Sandra's behavior grew bolder. She began setting house rules as if she were truly in charge. No more visitors after 9 p.m., she declared one evening at dinner, staring directly at me. This is a family home, not a hotel. My best friend Carol had come by earlier to talk about something personal. It was only 8:30, but Sandra appeared in the living room with folded arms. "Isn't it getting late?" she asked. Carol looked confused, and I felt my cheeks flush. "It's fine," I whispered. "We'll talk tomorrow." After Carol left, Sandra smiled. "You understand, right? We just need to keep the house respectable. Your friends are always welcome, within reasonable hours." Reasonable hours? In my own home? Things got worse when she started touching my personal belongings. One day, I came home and found my bookshelf rearranged. "It was messy," she said casually. "I organized it for you." Among those items was a small, imperfect vase my mom had made in pottery class. Her first handmade piece. Sandra had moved it to the back of the shelf. "It was taking up too much space," she explained. That vase wasn't just decoration. It was a memory. Who gave her the right to decide what belonged in front or hidden away? Then came the cameras. Sandra installed a security system to protect the family. Cameras at the entrance, in the living room, and even the kitchen. She proudly showed Dad how she could monitor everything remotely on her phone. "Technology is amazing," she said. "Now I can make sure everything's fine even when I'm not home." I felt constantly watched. I couldn't relax, couldn't invite friends without feeling spied on. My refuge had turned into a digital prison. Jessica and Amanda seemed uneasy about their mother's actions, but rarely spoke. Sometimes I'd catch Jessica looking at me as if she wanted to say something, then quickly turning away. Amanda once whispered, "My mom can be really intense," but went silent the moment Sandra entered the room. The breaking point came when Sandra decided Mom's garden needed modernizing. Mom had planted roses, lavender, and herbs, simple but full of love. "These plants look so messy," Sandra said one Saturday morning. "I'll hire a landscaper to make it more presentable." "No," I said firmly. She looked surprised. It was the first time I had openly opposed her. "Dear, you don't understand gardening," she said in that condescending tone I'd grown to hate. "I'll make it beautiful." "No," I repeated, my voice trembling. "My mother planted this garden. Don't touch it." Sandra smiled, but it wasn't kind. "Of course, dear," she said softly. "We'll discuss it later." I knew that meant she'd already made up her mind. That night, I overheard her talking to my father through the thin walls. I caught words like ungrateful, difficult, and disrespectful. The next morning, Dad approached me gently. "Sandra is just trying to help," he said, not meeting my eyes. "She cares about you. Maybe you could be more flexible." Flexible, another word that stung. "Dad, this is my house," I said firmly. "Mom left it to me. I don't need to compromise on what matters." He sighed, looking older than usual. "Your mother would want us to be happy as a family. Sometimes compromise is necessary." Compromise, flexibility, pretty words hiding the truth that I was being pressured to surrender what was mine. To keep peace with a woman who seemed intent on erasing every trace of my mother. As I drove to work, one thought kept running through my mind. How far was Sandra willing to go to get what she wanted? And how far would I go to protect it? The answer came sooner than I expected. It was a rainy Tuesday in October, and I came home early after canceling some meetings. The house was quiet. Sandra was usually in the studio, but that day there was no sound. As I went upstairs, I saw that Mom's bedroom door was open. Not Sandra's studio, the real bedroom where Mom's things were kept. My heart raced. Inside, Sandra was surrounded by boxes, holding Mom's jewelry, her engagement ring among them, a small emerald shining faintly. "What are you doing?" I shouted. Sandra turned calmly, as if caught doing nothing wrong. "Oh, good, you're here," she said. "I was organizing these old things. It's time you got rid of them." "Get rid of them?" I asked, stunned. "These are my mother's things." "Exactly," she said, placing the ring in a box. "Old things that are just collecting dust. It's not healthy to cling to the past." My eyes swept across the room. Mom's paintings were stacked in a box marked donation. Her diaries piled in another. "You can't do this," I cried, grabbing the boxes. "These are mine." "Dear, keeping all this isn't good for you," Sandra said with feigned sympathy. "Your mother wouldn't want you living in the past." I clutched one of Mom's diaries to my chest. "You didn't know my mother," I said, trembling. "Don't act like you know what she would want." "I know what any mother would want," Sandra replied, coldly, "for her daughter to move forward, not live in a museum of grief." That was the moment I saw it, real satisfaction in her eyes. She was enjoying my pain. "Get out," I said firmly, "out of this room." "I'm not leaving," Sandra shot back, raising her voice. "Someone has to help you grow up. Even your father thinks you're too attached to these things." "My father said that?" I asked in disbelief. "He worries about you," she continued smoothly. "He thinks you'll never build a future if you stay trapped in the past." There was no compassion in her tone, only triumph. "These things aren't going anywhere," I said, pulling items from the boxes. "And you're never coming in here again." Sandra laughed. "You forget this house is as much mine as yours. I live here, pay bills, take care of things. I have rights too." "Rights?" I said, furious. "This is my house. My mother left it to me. It's in her will." Sandra shrugged. "Wills can be challenged, especially when the person inheriting can't properly maintain the property." The threat was clear. She wasn't just invading my space. She was planning to take my home. "You need to leave," I repeated, my voice shaking. "No," she said simply. "Because your father agrees with me." At that moment, Dad appeared in the doorway, uneasy. "What's going on?" he asked. Sandra's tone instantly softened. "I was just helping your daughter organize some old things, but she's being difficult." Dad looked at her, then at me, then at the boxes scattered on the floor. "Daughter," he said hesitantly, "maybe it's time to put away some of these things. It doesn't have to be all at once, but..." "But what?" I asked, my heart breaking. Tears stung my eyes. "Dad, these are Mom's things. They're all I have left of her." "She's not in these things," he said gently. "She's here," he touched his chest, "and here," he touched his forehead. "These are just objects. Just objects. The jewelry she wore, the paintings she created, the diaries filled with her dreams and fears. Just objects to the man who once vowed to love her forever." "Get out," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "Both of you, get out of this room." "Daughter," Dad began. "Get out!" I shouted, surprising even myself. They left, but I could hear Sandra whispering something to Dad in the hallway. His low murmurs followed, then their fading footsteps, leaving me alone among the scattered boxes and the crushing truth that I was fighting this battle completely alone. I sat on the floor of Mom's room and cried harder than I had since her funeral. But through the tears, a quiet resolve started to build inside me. Sandra had crossed a boundary that couldn't be undone. She had touched sacred things, irreplaceable memories, the last traces of the woman who raised me. And for that, there would be consequences. But first, I needed help, someone who understood the law, who could protect what was rightfully mine. I needed a lawyer. The next morning, I woke up with swollen eyes, but a determination I hadn't felt in years. I had spent the night carefully reorganizing Mom's belongings, returning each item to its place. More importantly, I spent hours researching lawyers who specialized in property and inheritance law. I decided on Miranda and Associates, a firm downtown with solid reviews. I called the moment their office opened and got an appointment for that same afternoon. At work, I could barely focus. My boss, Mrs. Elena, noticed immediately. "Are you all right, dear? You seem tense." "Just some personal issues," I replied, keeping my eyes on the spreadsheet in front of me. "If you need to leave early, go ahead," she said kindly. Mrs. Elena had always been one of the few who truly cared. By 3 p.m., I was sitting in the law office's waiting area, nervous and unsure how to begin. When the secretary called my name, she led me to a room where a woman around 45 was waiting. "I'm Dr. Miranda," she said, extending her hand. "Nice to meet you. You mentioned inheritance issues over the phone?" "Yes," I replied, sitting opposite her. "My mother passed away 8 years ago and left me our house, but things have become complicated." I told her everything, from Sandra entering our lives to what had happened the previous day. Dr. Miranda listened attentively, taking notes. "Do you have the will?" she asked. "Yes," I said, handing her the copy I had kept all these years. She examined it closely. "Everything looks in order. Your mother left the property entirely to you, with usufruct for your father while he lives. That means the house belongs to you, though your father has the right to live there. Sandra, however, has no legal claim. She's simply his wife, and that gives her no ownership rights." I felt a wave of relief. "So, she can't contest the will?" "She can try," Dr. Miranda said, "but it would have no basis. She's not a legal heir, didn't contribute to the property, and the will grants her nothing." Dr. Miranda, "You even have the authority to decide who can or cannot reside there, while respecting your father's right of use." "You mean I can ask her and her daughters to leave?" "Yes," she confirmed. "Notify them to vacate within a set deadline, usually 15 days. Where father may remain, but others need your permission to live there." My heart raced. There was a lawful way to reclaim my home. "How does the process work?" I asked. "First, we send an official notice giving a deadline for voluntary departure. If she refuses, we can proceed with a repossession case. It might take time, but the law supports you. You have the title and a valid will. She's occupying it without rights." She explained the costs and timeline. It wasn't cheap, but I had savings, and this was worth every penny. "There's one more point," Dr. Miranda added. "You said she made improvements to the house?" "Yes, she might use that as an argument. But it actually helps your case. Anyone making changes to property they don't own has no right to compensation, especially if done without your permission. In fact, it can be considered damage." I finally felt equipped to fight back. "Let's proceed," I said. "I want her out." "Very well," Dr. Miranda replied. "I'll prepare the notice today. You can collect it tomorrow and deliver it personally." I left the office feeling empowered for the first time in months. The drive home felt lighter. Every street, every stoplight brought me closer to the moment Sandra would realize she had underestimated me. When I arrived, the house was empty. A note in the kitchen read, "We went to the mall, back for dinner." Perfect. I went to Mom's room and sat in the chair she used to read in. Closing my eyes, I felt her presence again. "Mom," I whispered, "you were right to leave this house to me. I'll protect it, I promise." When I opened my eyes, my gaze landed on one of her paintings. The painted eyes seemed to look back at me with pride. I knew then I wasn't alone. Mom was with me, and now the law was too. Sandra had made her last move. Now it was my turn. The next morning, I picked up the notice from Dr. Miranda's office. The document clearly stated that Sandra, along with her daughters Jessica and Amanda, had 15 days to vacate the property at 247 Flora Street. "Remember," Dr. Miranda instructed, "deliver it personally and ask for her signature. If she refuses, leave it in front of witnesses." That afternoon, I returned home. Sandra was in the kitchen preparing dinner, humming as though nothing had happened. Dad watched TV in the living room, and the girls were in their rooms. "Sandra," I said firmly, "we need to..." Sandra took the envelope curiously. As she read, her face shifted from surprise to anger. "What is this?" "It's a legal notice," I said calmly. "You have 15 days to leave my house." "Your house?" She laughed bitterly. "I've lived here 5 years. I pay bills, take care of everything. You think you can just throw me out?" "I don't think," I said steadily. "I know. The property is legally mine. Check the registry if you'd like." Dad appeared at the doorway. "What's going on?" "Your daughter's lost it," Sandra shouted, waving the paper. "She wants to kick me out of my house." "It's not your house," I corrected. "It never was. Dad can stay, but the notice is for you and your daughters." Dad's face paled as he read the paper. "Daughter, what is this?" "It's what I should have done years ago," I replied. "Mom left this house to me. You both will respect that or leave."
"I didn't break this family."
"You can't do this,"
I said
Sandra
evenly.
snapped. "We're
You
a
did
family."
when
"When you disrespected my mother and her memory." Jessica and Amanda entered, drawn by the noise. "Girls, do you hear this?" Sandra cried. "She wants to kick us out of our house." "It's not ours, Mom," Jessica said quietly. "We always knew it was hers." Sandra stared at her, shocked. "We built a home here," she insisted. "We did," Amanda said softly. "But on top of her pain, you shouldn't have touched her mother's things yesterday." "I was trying to help," Sandra shouted. "The obsession is yours," I said, my patience gone. "You can't control everything, or erase what doesn't belong to you." Dad looked torn. "Can't we talk this through?" "I've tried for 5 years," I said, but she crossed a line. "What line?" "She tried to throw away Mom's belongings," I said, voice trembling. Silence filled the room. Dad turned to Sandra, his voice quiet but firm. "Those things weren't yours to touch." "So now you're taking her side," Sandra demanded. "I'm taking the side of what's right," he said, "and touching Maria's things wasn't right." Sandra's face hardened. "Fine," she said coldly. "If you want me gone, I'll go, but not alone." She turned to Dad. "You come with me or stay with your ungrateful daughter." The silence that followed was heavy. Dad looked at me, then at Sandra, then at the girls. "Sandra," he began. "It's simple," she interrupted. "Her or us." She thought she knew his answer, but after a long pause, Dad said quietly, "What's right is acknowledging this house belongs to my daughter. It always has." Sandra's face went pale. "You're choosing her?" "I'm choosing the truth," Dad said. Sandra's expression turned cold. "Very well. but you have no idea who you're dealing with. She tore the notice in half. 15 days? We'll see. Before anyone could speak, she stormed upstairs, slamming the door. A selfish daughter forced her mother out of her own home purely out of greed. But things were about to get worse. On the 10th day of the deadline, I came home from work and saw my father sitting in the living room with a serious look. "Daughter, we need to talk," he said. "What's wrong?" "It's about Sandra. She has a proposal." My heart tightened. "What kind of proposal?" "She wants to buy your part of the house." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "My part? Dad, the entire house belongs to me. There's no part to sell." "I know," he said quickly, "but she's offering a fair amount for the whole place. You could get a smaller apartment, live independently, and let Sandra keep your mother's house. It's only a building, daughter. Your mother isn't in its walls." I looked at my father carefully and barely recognized the man in front of me. The same man who had loved my mother deeply, who had cried at her funeral, and who had vowed to honor her memory, was now suggesting I sell her home to the woman who had tried to erase every trace of her. "How much?" I asked, wanting to see just how far Sandra would go. 200,000, he said, avoiding my eyes. The house was worth at least 400,000, and Sandra knew it. The offer was insulting, clearly meant to provoke me. "And if I refuse?" I asked. Dad hesitated. "Sandra said she could contest the will. She claims she made improvements to the property and contributed to its upkeep. She believes she has rights." So the threat was finally out in the open. Sandra wanted to buy the house for half its value or drag me into a lawsuit that could last years. "And you?" I asked quietly. "What do you think I should do?" He took a deep breath. "I think it would be easier for everyone if you accepted the offer." Easier for everyone, meaning easier for him, who wanted to avoid conflict. "Dad," I said calmly, "do you remember what Mom told you before she died? Why she left me this house?" He stayed silent. "She said I'd need protection, that not everyone who says they love us truly does. She wanted me to have something that was only mine, something no one could take away." "Your mother was sick," he murmured. "Sometimes she said strange things. She wasn't delirious, Dad. She was right, and you know it." At that moment, Sandra appeared in the doorway, wearing that tight, cold smile I had learned to fear. "So," she said, "did you think about my offer?" "I did," I replied, standing up. "And my answer is no." Her smile faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered. "Are you sure? It's a generous offer." "Generous would be you leaving my house without forcing me to call the police." "Oh dear," she said sweetly. "Do you really think it's that simple?" "Yes," I replied. "It's very simple." Sandra looked at Dad, then back at me. "We'll see," she said. "Why she left me this house?" He stayed silent. "She said I'd need protection, that not everyone who says they love us truly does. She wanted me to have something that was only mine, something no one could take away." "Your mother was sick," he murmured. "Sometimes she said strange things." "She wasn't delirious, Dad. She was right, and you know it." At that moment, Sandra appeared in the doorway, wearing that tight, cold smile I had learned to fear. "So," she said, "did you think about my offer?" "I did," I replied, standing up, "and my answer is no." Her smile faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered. "Are you sure? It's a generous offer." "Generous would be you leaving my house without forcing me to call the police." "Oh dear," she said sweetly. "Do you really think it's that simple?" "Yes," I replied. "It's very simple." Sandra looked at Dad, then back at me. We'll see, she said. The next day, when I returned from work, a court officer was waiting at my door with a legal notice. Sandra had filed a property claim, demanding half of the house. The war had officially begun. For the first time, I felt afraid, but I also felt a growing determination not to let her destroy what my mother had left me. She wanted a fight, and she would get one. I immediately called my lawyer, Dr. Miranda. Can she really do this? Does she have any chance of winning? Calm down. Dr. Miranda said, I've read the claim. Her arguments are weak. She's alleging a common law marriage with your father and claiming she made improvements to the house. But a common law marriage doesn't give her automatic rights to assets owned before it began. And any improvements she made were without your consent. How long will this take? Anywhere from 6 months to 2 years, depending on the court. We'll file a strong defense and request an injunction to secure your ownership. 2 years. That meant Sandra could stay in my house for that long while the court decided on something that should have been obvious. That night, when I got home, the atmosphere had changed. Sandra seemed relaxed, even cheerful. She hummed while cooking dinner, acting as though she hadn't just sued her stepdaughter. Hi, dear, she said when she saw me. How was work? The forced normality was more unsettling than open hostility. It felt as if she knew something I didn't. Dad was in the living room, avoiding my eyes. Jessica, her daughter, was studying at the table and gave me a small, sad smile. Hi, she said softly. Are you okay? I'm fine, I said, gently touching her shoulder. And you? I didn't know my mom was going to do this, she whispered. I tried to stop her. It's not your fault. Then, while serving dessert, she casually said, a friend of mine is coming to dinner tomorrow. I think you'll like her. What's her name? Hope. She's a real estate broker, very smart and successful. You could learn a few things from her. The name sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it. Later that night, I searched online and found Hope's professional profile. She wasn't just any broker. She specialized in luxury properties and was also a consultant for disputed estates and court evaluations. Sandra wasn't inviting a friend to dinner. She was bringing in reinforcements. The next day, I left work early to be present. When I arrived, Hope was already there. A well-dressed woman around 50, confident and composed. You must be the famous stepdaughter, she said, shaking my hand firmly. Sandra's told me a lot about you. I can imagine, I replied politely. Throughout dinner, Hope led the conversation, discussing property markets and legal cases she had followed. It's amazing how emotionally attached people get to properties, she said, cutting her fish neatly. They often ignore practical realities. And what would those realities be? I asked. Well, maintaining a house like this is costly. Taxes, repairs. Sometimes younger owners aren't ready for such responsibilities. Young people can learn, I said. Of course, she smiled condescendingly. But often it's wiser to let experienced people handle it. Her remarks continued in that tone, subtle, calculated, and manipulative. It was psychological pressure disguised as polite conversation. After dinner, as Hope prepared to leave, she approached me. Can I give you some advice? She asked quietly. Sure, I said. Sometimes fighting for what we think is ours costs more than it's worth. Lawsuits are expensive and draining, and don't always end as expected. Thank you, I said calmly, but some things are worth fighting for. She smiled slightly. Sandra was right. You are determined. I just hope your determination is based on reality, not illusions. After she left, Sandra turned to me in the kitchen. Did you like Hope? She's interesting, I said neutrally. She knows a lot about property rights. If you want, she can look into your situation and explain your options. It was a clear attempt to make me rely on her own expert. A transparent strategy. Thanks, I said, but I already have a lawyer. Of course, she replied, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I realized Hope's visit wasn't casual. It was meant to show me Sandra's power and connections. That night, I called Dr. Miranda again and explained everything. They're trying to intimidate you, she said. It's common in property disputes. Show off resources to make you back down. What if they really have something I don't know about? They don't, she assured me. Inheritance law is clear. They're just trying to exhaust you. So what do? We stand firm. We'll demand evidence of any improvements and challenge every claim. I hung up, feeling more confident. Sandra had money and influence, but I had the truth. Sometimes that was enough. Sometimes it wasn't. 3 weeks later, I received a call from Jessica at work. Her voice sounded anxious. Can we meet for lunch? It's important. Of course. Where? At the park near your office. When I arrived, she was already there, looking nervous and glancing around. What happened? I asked, sitting beside her. It's about my mom and the lawsuit, she said, her voice shaking. You don't need to get involved, Jessica. No, you don't understand, she interrupted. I have to. I've seen things you need to know. My heart began to race. What kind of things? Jessica took a deep breath. My mom isn't who she pretends to be. She's worse. She owns other properties, at least 3 that I know of, an apartment downtown, a beach house, and a small farm outside the city. I stared at her, stunned. How do you know this? I help her with the accounts for her craft business, and I found the documents. She took a folder from her bag. She doesn't know I made copies, but I couldn't stay silent anymore. Inside were deeds, bank statements, and other papers confirming everything. Sandra had hidden a significant amount of property. Why would she hide this? Because she wants everyone to believe she depends on your father, that she has nowhere else to go if she's forced out. It's part of her plan. What plan? Jessica hesitated. She's wanted this house since the day she moved in. She researched your mother, the will, and you. She knew what she was doing when she married your dad. A chill went through me. So she planned all of this? Not at first, Jessica said. I think she cared about your father in the beginning. But once she saw the house's value, everything changed. And does my dad know about her other properties? No, she keeps them separate. Says it's to protect the family's assets. I looked again at the documents. 2 of the properties had been purchased after she married my father, supposedly with money she didn't have. Jessica, I said quietly, why are you telling me this? She's your mother. Tears welled in her eyes. Because I care about you. Because it's wrong. And I'm tired of pretending I don't see who she really is. This could cause you problems, I warned. I know, but I can't stay quiet. Not after seeing her throw away your mother's belongings. That was disgusting. I hugged her tightly. Thank you. You have no idea how much this means to me. There's one more thing, Jessica added. About the lawsuit, she's paying the lawyer with money from one of those hidden properties. And she told me she has a backup plan. If she loses, she'll offer your father one of her other houses, the beach house, worth around $300,000, in exchange for his cooperation. Now I understood. Sandra wasn't just fighting for the house. She was willing to bribe my own father to get it. Do you have proof? I asked. I recorded some of her conversations, Jessica admitted. I started doing it when things got serious, for my own safety. I was amazed at her courage. At only 19, she was risking her relationship with her mother to do what was right. "Will you be safe?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "Amanda and I were planning to move out soon anyway. We can take care of ourselves." I smiled, relieved. "If you need anything, thank you," she said softly. For the first time, she looked at peace. "We'll be fine." The question was whether I would use the information I had found. I looked down at the folder in my hands. It contained evidence powerful enough to completely alter the outcome of the lawsuit. Sandra had lied about her finances, hidden assets, and was planning to bribe a key witness. "I'll take this to my lawyer," I said. "She'll know exactly how to handle it." When we returned home that afternoon, the atmosphere was tense. Sandra was in the kitchen, but the usual humming was gone. My dad sat in the living room, looking disturbed. "Where were you?" Sandra asked as Jessica walked in. "I met a friend for lunch," Jessica replied calmly. Sandra studied her for a moment, then returned to her task, but I could tell she was suspicious. That night, I called Dr. Miranda and arranged an urgent meeting for the next day. When I showed her the documents and the recordings, she looked visibly energized. "This changes everything," she said. "We'll use this to dismantle her entire argument. If she hid assets and lied about her financial state, she could face criminal charges for bad faith litigation and attempted bribery. If we can prove that, it's coercion, a crime. This opens up multiple legal options. For the first time since this ordeal began, I felt a real sense of hope. Sandra had underestimated her daughter, and that mistake could become her downfall. Still, I knew that once she discovered Jessica's involvement, things could get dangerous for all of us. The war wasn't over, but at least now I had weapons to fight back. The hearing was set for a rainy Tuesday in March. I had barely slept the night before, replaying every argument and reviewing the evidence Dr. Miranda had organized. Jessica called early that morning to wish me luck, though her voice trembled. "Mom's been acting strange since yesterday," she said. "I think she suspects something. Are you safe?" "I am," I replied. "Amanda and I packed our bags. If things get too bad, we'll go to our aunt's place." At the courthouse, I saw Sandra and her lawyer, Dr. Mitchell, a man in his 60s with a confident air that made me uneasy. Sandra looked perfectly composed, dressed impeccably, her face arranged in the expression of an injured victim she had mastered over the months. My dad sat beside her, looking older and more fragile than I remembered. When our eyes met, he quickly looked away. "Remember, Dr. Mitchell," Miranda whispered, "let me ask the questions. If anyone tries to intimidate you, stay calm." The judge, Dr. Patricia, was a serious-looking middle-aged woman who carried herself with quiet authority. She began the hearing by outlining the case and procedure. Dr. Mitchell spoke first, portraying Sandra as a devoted woman who had spent 5 years caring for a property and a family, investing her time and money, only to be unjustly expelled by a resentful stepdaughter. "Your Honor," he said, "my client seeks no charity. She only demands fair recognition for her contribution to the property she helped maintain and improve." When it was Dr. Miranda's turn, she was precise. "Your Honor, this case concerns a blatant attempt to usurp a rightful inheritance. The plaintiff has no legal claim to the property, which was transferred to my client through a valid and registered will." Then came the testimonies. Sandra spoke first, and her performance was convincing. She cried at all the right moments, spoke of her sacrifices, her love for the family, and her connection to the house. "I treated that girl like my own daughter," she said, wiping away tears that looked genuine. "I cared for the house as if it were mine, because in my heart it was. and now she wants to throw me out as if I were a stranger. When it was my turn, I steadied my voice, despite the nerves. This house was left to me by my late mother, I said. The plaintiff repeatedly tried to erase her memory from this home, even discarding items of deep sentimental value. Dr. Mitchell interrupted me several times, questioning my emotional ability to manage such a valuable property. But Dr. Miranda swiftly intervened each time. Then came the turning point, Dad's testimony. He walked to the microphone hesitantly. Sandra's eyes locked on him as if trying to control him from across the room. "Mr. Robert," Dr. Mitchell began, "how long were you in a common-law marriage with Mrs. Sandra?" 5 years, Dad replied quietly. "And during that time, did she contribute significantly to maintaining the property?" "Yes, some," he said after a pause. "Mr. Robert, did you sign any document transferring your rights over the property to your wife?" That's when everything shifted. Dad looked at Sandra, then at me, and back to Dr. Mitchell. "I signed some papers," he said slowly, "but I never really understood what they were." Dr. Miranda immediately stood. "Your Honor, we have newly relevant evidence." She handed a folder to the judge. "These are copies of deeds for properties owned by the plaintiff, which she concealed throughout this case." The courtroom fell silent. Sandra went pale, and Dr. Mitchell looked stunned. "Your Honor," Dr. Miranda continued, "the plaintiff has claimed financial dependence to justify her supposed rights. But these documents prove she possesses significant assets that were deliberately hidden." The judge examined the papers carefully. "Dr. Miranda, how were these obtained?" "Through a lawful source, Your Honor," she replied. The judge turned to Dr. Mitchell. "Were you aware of these assets?" He shook his head. "No, Your Honor. My client assured me she was financially dependent." "Mrs. Sandra," the judge said sternly, "do you confirm these documents are authentic?" Sandra's lips parted, but no sound came out. Finally, she stammered, I can explain." "Explain what?" the judge asked sharply. "Why you hid assets while claiming dependence?" At that moment, the courtroom doors opened. Jessica walked in, with Amanda beside her. "Your Honor," she said clearly, "I'm the plaintiff's daughter, and I have important information about this case." Sandra rose abruptly. "Jessica, what are you doing?" "The right thing, Mom," Jessica replied. The judge allowed her to speak. With composure, Jessica revealed everything: the hidden properties, the manipulation, and the plan to bribe my father. "I have recordings," she said, handing her phone to the judge. "My mother offered a beach property to Mr. Robert in exchange for his cooperation." Sandra exploded. "You're my daughter. How could you do this to me?" "Because being your daughter doesn't mean helping you lie," Jessica said through tears. The judge called a recess to review the recordings. When we returned, her expression was grave. "After reviewing the evidence," she said, "it's clear this case was filed in bad faith. The plaintiff hid assets, lied about her finances, and attempted to influence a witness." Sandra trembled. "Therefore, I dismiss the claim and order the plaintiff to pay court costs and the defendant's legal fees. Furthermore, this matter will be referred to the public prosecutor for potential charges of false representation and coercion." The sound of the gavel echoed through the room. Dad sat with his face buried in his hands. Sandra stared at Jessica with pure hatred. But I felt only relief. The war was finally over. Outside, Jessica hugged me tightly. "Thank you," I said. "No," she replied. "Thank you for showing me it's possible to do the right thing, even when it's hard. Sandra walked past us without a word, followed by Dr. Mitchell, who looked frustrated. Dad approached hesitantly. "I'm sorry for everything," he said quietly. I looked at him, seeing both regret and years of poor choices. "I know you're sorry," I said, "but that doesn't undo what was done." "Can you forgive me?" he asked. I thought for a moment. "I can forgive," I said softly, "but I can't forget. Things won't be the same." He nodded sadly. "I understand." When we got home, Sandra was packing her things in silence. Jessica and Amanda had already prepared to leave. "We'll stay with our aunt for now," Jessica explained, "until we figure things out." "You're welcome to stay here," I offered. "Thanks," she said, "but it's better this way." Sandra paused at the door and looked at me. "You think you've won?" she said bitterly. "You don't know what you've lost." "I know exactly what I've lost," I replied calmly. "A manipulator who tried to erase my mother's memory, and I'm at peace with that." She slammed the door behind her. That night, for the first time in years, I had dinner alone in my house. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was freeing. Later, I went to Mom's room and sat in her old armchair. I picked up one of her diaries Sandra had tried to throw away. On one page, in Mom's delicate handwriting, were the words, "My dear daughter will need to be strong one day. The world will try to take what's hers, but I trust she will know how to fight when necessary." I smiled through tears. I fought. "Mom," I whispered, "and I won." Outside, the rain stopped, and sunlight began to pierce the clouds. The storm had passed. It was time to rebuild.